Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, modern meets whimsy for a classy puff sleeve top that manages to be as modern as it feels magical. Speaking of, if you're into magical makes that feel regal or modern that would fit any current wardrobe, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of crochet tutorials and patterns with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 3 yarn will work, but I used a total of 270 grams of yarn, and that's 950 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 4mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order. Enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us what is a song that always gets you in a good mood. Mine would have to be Love on Top by Beyonce. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we'll explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 3 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 4mm hook and start off by making an even number chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where we like the bottom of this top to be, so you can make this cropped or full length. I'd like for mine to be cropped, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 34, and that's going to be 7 inches or 18 centimeters for me. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our row 1, which is a single crochet row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and that's our first single crochet. Continue with 1 single crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. We are at the end of our row 1. We should all have 1 chain left, and now we're going to do an increase. That increase is going to be 1 single, 1 half double, and 1 double crochet, all into that same last chain. So into there, insert with a single, same last chain with a half double, same last chain with a double. Now this row is complete. We should all have 2 more stitches, then chains made. Now from here, our following row is going to be a moss stitch row. So getting that started, we're all going to start with a chain 2. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. That second chain is going to count as a chain and flip our work. Now for every even number row, we are not going to have to do any increases, so all we're going to do is skip that first stitch from our previous row. Into the next, insert with a single crochet. So skip 1, into that next with a single crochet. Now we should all have 1 chain space, which may be a little bit hard to see, and a single crochet, so far we should all have 2 stitches for this row. Doing that again, we're all going to chain 1, skip a stitch, into the next with a single crochet. Now we should have chain space, single, chain space, single, so that should be 4 stitches for this row so far. From here, continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, and single crochet into the next till you reach the end of the row. We are back, and our row 2 is complete. We should have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. This is going to be a 3-row repeat, and our following row is going to be a moss stitch row. So just like the previous one, whenever we're getting started on a moss stitch row, we're all going to start with a chain 2. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. Second chain is going to count as a chain and flip our work. And again, we're going to skip that first stitch and into the next, which should be a chain space. Now, because our previous row is a moss stitch row, we're going to insert into there with a single crochet. So skip one into that next stitch with a single crochet, and so far for this row, we should all have our first chain space, which may be a little hard to see, but it's there, and a single crochet. So far 2 stitches for this row. From here, continue to chain 1, skip a stitch and into the next, which should be our chain space, insert with a single crochet until we all have 2 stitches left. We are nearly finished with our row 3. We should all have 2 stitches left, and for this underarm portion, we're going to be increasing at the end of every odd number row. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch from our previous row, which should be a single crochet, and then into that last stitch from our previous row, which is our chain space. And as a really quick tip, it could not look like we have an extra stitch there because it may be collapsed, but remember, if you pull it apart a little bit, that chain space is there. Now into that last stitch, which is that chain space. We're going to do the same increase that we did for our row 1. So a single, a half double, and a double all into that last stitch. So we did our chain 1 like I said. We're going to skip that following stitch, which is that single crochet, into that last stitch, insert with a single, with a half double, and then with a double crochet, and our first 3 rows are completed. Now from here, it is technically going to be a 3-row repeat, but since it is an odd number of rows to repeat, sometimes our single crochet row is going to start at the top, or it's going to end along the top, like how our first single crochet row did. So since we're along the top and we're about to get started on our next single crochet row, which is an even number row, we are not going to be doing an increase. So what we're going to do from here is chain 1, flip our work, and like I said, for every even number row, we are not going to be doing any increases, so just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. We are back. Our single crochet row is complete, and we should all now have a total of 4 rows. Our following row in our 3-row repeat is going to be a moss stitch row. So like I said, whenever we're getting started with a moss stitch row, it's always going to start with a chain 2. There's 1, there's 2, flip our work, and now since this is an odd number moss stitch row, we're going to do our moss stitch, leaving the last 2 stitches, and then we'll increase together. So we are going to skip that first stitch, into the next, insert with a single. That should give us the first 2 stitches for our row. Chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next, and I will meet you back when we all have 2 stitches left. We are back. Our first 5 rows are nearly complete. We should all have 2 stitches left, and now we're going to do the same increase that we did for our previous odd number moss stitch row. So what we're going to do is chain 1, skip that following stitch, which should be our second to last, and then into the next, which should be our last, the same increases that we've been doing. So just single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet all into that same last stitch. And the following row in our 3-row repeat is a moss stitch row, but since it's an even number row, no increases. So what we're going to do to get started with that is chain 2, flip our work, and we're going to skip that first stitch, into the next, insert with a single crochet, giving us the first 2 stitches for this row, then chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next, which should be our chain space, and continue on with this moss stitch row until we reach the end. We are back, and our first 6 rows are completed. Now from here, what we're going to do is continue to repeat our 6 previous rows until we have an underarm portion that can reach from mid-underarm over to the front of our body, so roughly where a bra strap or a tank top strap would be. Then I will meet you back right after a single crochet row that ends along the top, so then we can work straight into the shoulder together from there. We are back. Our underarm portion is complete. Now I have a total of 13 rows. My total width is roughly 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters. Now from here, we're all going to make an even number chain that reaches all the way up to the top of our shoulder. Now as a really quick sizing tip, we're all going to want to make sure that this tail end still stays at 1 inch underneath our underarm. Otherwise our armhole can become either way too big or way too small. So I have already measured mine out. I need roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So I went ahead and made a chain 20. Now from here, all we're going to do is continue to do our 3-row repeat, now without any increases or decreases, until we have the shoulder portion that we need. So getting started on the following row, it is going to be our first moss stitch row. So let's get that started. Now once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That first chain counts as our turning chain, second chain counts as our chain. Then from here, we're all going to single crochet into the 4th chain from our hook. So here's 1, 2, 3 is the one that we blocked off, and 4. Into that 4th chain, insert with a single crochet, and so far for this row we should have our chain space and single crochet, so 2 stitches so far for this row. Then from here is our normal moss stitch row, so chain 1, skip a stitch, and into the next insert with a single crochet, and we're just going to continue this to reach the end of the row. Then our following row in our 3-row repeat is another moss stitch row. So chain 2, flip your work, and then do our moss stitches all the way back up. And then the following row is a single crochet row, so just 1 single crochet into every stitch. Now we're going to continue to repeat these 3 previous rows with no increases and no decreases until we have a shoulder portion that can reach from mid-underarm over to the side of the base of our neck. And then I will meet you back right after a single crochet row that ends along the bottom, and then we can get started on the neckline together from there. We are back. I have finished up my shoulder portion. Now I have a total of 28 rows. My width is roughly 5 inches or 13 centimeters. Now we're going to get started on our neckline. So first things first, we're all going to be inserting our stitch marker into an even numbered stitch from the top that's nearest to the base of our neck. Now I've inserted my stitch marker into the 6th stitch from the top. That's roughly 1 inch or 2 centimeters. And now we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which is a moss stitch row. So since we should all be along the bottom, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and do our moss stitches all the way up until we're worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker. We are back. I have just finished up my first neckline row, which was a moss stitch row, until we reached our stitch marker. Now from here, we're going to continue to do our 3-row repeat, and since we're working our way across our chest, we aren't going to have any increases or decreases. So our following row is going to be a moss stitch row, so chain 2, flip our work, do our moss stitches all the way down. Then our following row after that's going to be a single crochet row, so just 1 single crochet into every stitch. We're just going to continue to repeat those 3 rows, again, no increases and no decreases, working our way across our chest. So from the side of the base of our neck, across our chest, over to the other side of the base of our neck. And then I will meet you back right after a moss stitch row that ends along the top, because remember sometimes I can end along the bottom. And then I'll meet you back once we have that portion, and then we can do our next shoulder portion together from there. We are back. I have just finished up my neckline. I have a total of 57 rows and my width is roughly 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters. And now we're going to do our second shoulder portion. Now, the second shoulder portion is going to be done pretty much the same way that the first one is, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. So since we all should have ended right after our second moss stitch row that ended along the top, what we're going to do from here is make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our neckline. I skipped a total of 6 stitches here. So to get started on my shoulder, I made a chain of 6. Then we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which is going to be a single crochet. So just to get our following row started together, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, for the second chain from our hook, insert with our single crochet. So insert, pull through 2. Then from here, continue on with 1 single crochet into every stitch. Our following 2 rows are going to be moss stitch rows, and for the shoulder portion, just like the first one, we aren't going to have any increases or decreases, and we're going to do it for the same amount of rows that we have for the first one as well. So go ahead and get the second one completed. When we have the same amount of rows, I'll meet you back so we can finish up with our underarm together. But just as a really quick tip, this shoulder portion that we're working on should have the same amount of stitches as our first one. I am back, and my second shoulder portion is complete. I have a total of 72 rows now, and my width is roughly 13 inches or 33 centimeters. Now we're going to finish up with our second underarm. So what we're all going to do from here is we're all going to start by inserting our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led all the way up to our shoulder. Now for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 20. So on this side, I inserted my stitch marker into the 20th stitch, and then we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which should be a single crochet for every one. So since we should all be along the bottom, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way up leaving the last 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. So we have just single crocheted our way all the way up, and we have left the last 1, 2, 3 stitches right before our stitch marker stitch. And now we're all going to do a decrease of 3 single crochets. So what we're all going to do is start by inserting our hook into that third to last stitch, pull through into that second to last stitch, pull through and into that last stitch, which is the stitch right before our stitch marker stitch, and pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Then from here, just yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. And that is that. Make sure you don't split your yarn. And the following row is going to be a moss stitch row, but without any increases or decreases. So get that following row completed. Then we're going to do our decrease for our following moss stitch row. So once we're done with our next moss stitch row, chain 2, flip your work, and then make your way back up with your second moss stitch row, but now leaving the last 4 stitches, and then I'll meet you back so we can do our decrease together once more. We are back. Our first 1, 2 rows for our underarm portion are complete, and our row 3 is nearly complete. We have left our last 4 stitches. So here is 1, 2, 3, and then that last stitch, our 4th, is that chain space. It could be really hard to see, making it look like we actually don't have a 4th stitch, but it is that chain space, so just pull it apart if you guys need to. And now we're just going to do another decrease of 3 single crochets. So all we're going to do is chain 1, skip that following stitch, into that third to last stitch, insert, pull through, second to last stitch, insert, pull through, and then into that last stitch that we may or may not be able to see, insert, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over and pull through all 4. And that's it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 3-row repeat, so a single crochet row and 2 moss stitch rows, making sure that we are always decreasing at the end of every odd number row so that it matches the first underarm portion that we did. We're going to continue to repeat these rows for the same amount of rows as our first underarm portion. Once we have the same amount of rows, do a chain up of 1 and cut. We are back. I have just finished up the entirety of my front panel. Now I have a total of 85 rows. My width is roughly 15.5 inches or 39 centimeters, and we're now going to make a second panel that is exactly the same. Once we have the second panel, I will meet you guys back so we can seam the shoulders together. We are back. Now that we have both our front and our back panel complete, next we're going to seam up our shoulders. So first things first, we're all going to place our front panel on top of our back. Then we're just going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel's shoulder corner. We're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and we're going to work our way across the tops of our shoulders, putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here, find that top loop, insert my hook. Into the back panel, find that top loop within that first side row, in through there, and insert with a single crochet. Let's do that again. Into the next side row within the front panel, find that top loop and insert. Find the next side row within the back panel, find that top loop and insert with another single. And that's pretty much it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more side rows left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. We are back. We have just finished up seaming our shoulders. Now we're going to seam up our sides. So first things first, we're all going to make sure that our shoulders are still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seam that we just did for the shoulders is still along the outside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 just to secure. And we're going to do another single crochet row, putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. So finding that first stitch within the front panel, insert your hook. Next stitch within the back panel, insert your hook, and single crochet around everything. And that's it. Let's do 1 more. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert. Next stitch into the back panel, insert with a single, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up. Well, we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. We are back. Now that everything is all seamed up, we're ready to get started on our bottom band. So first things first, we're all going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning all the seams that we have are now along the inside. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our piece. Then we're going to do a single crochet row with some decreases. So for this single crochet row, all we're going to do is alternate between one single crochet and a decrease of 2 single crochets. So let's get this started. Once when our hook is into one of our side rows, we're going to chain 1. I have already done mine. And we're all going to start by finding our first side row, and this is mine right here. I'm just going to find that top loop and insert with a single crochet. Then into our following 2 side rows, a decrease of 2 single crochets. So into the top of that following side row, we're going to insert, pull through, then into that following side row's top loop as well, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Let's do that again. This is my next side row. I'm going to insert with just 1 single crochet and then a decrease. So into the top of that next side row, pull through, into the top of that following side row as well, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3, and that's it. We're going to continue on with this single crochet row, making our way all the way around. Now, as a quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this piece can stretch. So once we made our way all the way around and slip stitched into that chain space, try on your piece, making sure that this single crochet row isn't too tight. If it is too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. Our single crochet row along the bottom of our piece is complete. We have tried it on, everything is fitting pretty nicely, and now we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the bottom band to be. Now we can keep this as short or make this as long as you like. I'd like for mine to still remain a crop top, so I'm going to start by making a chain 15, and that's roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. Now once we have our chain, we're all going to do a slip stitch row. So start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then we're going to slip stitch into that chain that we blocked off with a second chain from our hook. So insert into that chain. Then we're going to yarn over and gently pull through both of those loops on our hook. So there's the first and there's the second. Let's do that again. Into that next chain, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops again. From here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain, and we do want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch. Otherwise, the following row can be too tight to work into. We have made our way down, putting 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So all we're going to do is just start by finding that next available stitch into the base, insert in through there with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, still doesn't count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now we're going to be putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So start by finding the last stitch from our previous row, and we want to make sure we're not working into the slip stitches into the base. So just find that first stitch, insert into that back loop, or the loop that is furthest away from us, just like that. Then yarn over and gently pull through both of those loops. Again, into that next stitch, insert into that back loop, then yarn over and gently pull through everything, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Then at the end of the row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3 when we're ready to slip stitch it back into the base. We are back, and our first 3 rows are nearly complete. We're just now going to connect it into the base, and it is going to be done exactly the same way as our previous row. So just to connect our following row, find that next available stitch into the base and insert with a slip stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. None of those slip stitches into the base count as a stitch. Flip our work and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. And that's it. From here, all we're going to do is continue to do our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam our bottom band up together. We are back. We have made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows, and now we don't have any more stitches left to work into. So now we're going to do our seam. Now this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam. So we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert your hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. So what we're going to do from here is yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and now we're going to do our outside loop slip stitch seam. That's going to look like another back loop slip stitch row. So start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop. Then we're going to find that next stitch into the back panel, insert only in through that back loop. Then from here, yarn over and gently pull through all 3 of those loops. Again, into that next stitch into the front panel, insert only in through that front loop. Into the back panel, find that next stitch and insert only in through that back loop. Yarn over and pull through everything, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Alright, so we are back. Our bottom band is complete, and we're now just going to single crochet along our neckline just to clean everything up. So that's going to be fairly simple. I'm just going to talk you guys through that, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have along our neckline. Then just put 1 single crochet into every stitch. When we reach the cross of the chest portion, 1 single crochet goes into every side row, and then just continue on with that sequence all the way around. Now, just like the bottom band, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try our piece on, and if it's a little bit too tight, again, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. Once when this single crochet row is completed, I'll meet you back so we can get started on our sleeve. So we are back. We have just finished up single crocheting along our neckline, and now we're going to go in with our sleeve. So first things first, let's all make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole. Then from here, we're all going to start with a single crochet row. Start by putting 1 single crochet into every side row, working our way up our underarm. Then for our shoulder, we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then we're going to be doing the same single crochets on the other side as well, but I do want to meet you guys back once we do our last single crochet into the stitch that's right before our shoulder seam. So we are back. We've made our way up with the first half of our single crochets for our armhole, and now we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into that last single crochet right before our shoulder seam. Then we're going to do the same single crochet row, working our way down the other side of our shoulder seam as well, but we want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into that next stitch so that we have 2 middle stitches. So here's my stitch marker into this side, then just finding that first stitch on the other side of our shoulder seam. Start with a single crochet and just make sure to insert a stitch marker into that stitch as well. Then from here, continue on with the rest of the single crochet row, making sure that we have the same amount of stitches on both sides. Then I'll meet you back so we can get started on the length of our sleeve. We are back. We have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, and now we have slip stitched into that chain space. Now from here, we're all going to make a chain that is an odd number of chains, the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be. So since we'd like for this to be a short puff sleeve, I just made a chain of 15. That's roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. Now we're going to get started on our first Suzette stitch row. Now all we're going to do is block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. And now we're going to do our first Suzette stitch set, which is just going to be a single and double crochet into the same chain. So into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, bring our hook down and insert into there with a single crochet, and then into that same chain with a double crochet. So pull through 2, pull through 2. Now that is our first Suzette stitch set. Now let's do this again. After every Suzette stitch set, we are usually going to be skipping that next stitch because that double crochet that we just did counts as that stitch. If we do work into there, we will accidentally be increasing. So we're going to skip that following stitch and then into that next, insert with a single crochet, and then also with a double crochet. That's it. Let's do this again. Now we just finished a set, so skip that next stitch and into the next with a single and a double, and we're just going to continue to do our Suzette stitch sets until we all have just 2 chains left. We are back. We have made our way all the way down with our first row. We should all have 2 chains left, and now we're going to end the row with an increase. So all that's going to be is 3 half double crochets into that last chain. So start with a yarn over, skip that next chain, which should be our second to last, and then into the next, insert with 3 half double crochets, so fairly simple. There is my first, into that same last chain with our second, and then same last chain with our third, and that's it. Now we're just going to connect it into the base. So what we're going to do is just find that next available stitch into the base and insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that is just to connect. Then from here we're going to do 3 more suzette stitch rows, but now without any increases or decreases. Now this portion of the sleeve is going to be a repeat of these 4 rows, so let's just get the following 3 rows started together. Since we just slip stitched into that next available stitch into the base, we do need to work our way up to the following row. So slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base as well. Flip our work, and now we're just going to do our suzette stitches all the way down. So getting that started, we're going to find the first stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, and do our first suzette stitch set. So we should all know how to do this. This is super simple, just a single and a double crochet into that first stitch. Then from here, skip that following stitch into the next with a single and a double, and we're going to continue on with our suzette stitch sets until we all have just 2 stitches left. Now our row 2 is nearly finished. We've made our way down with our suzette stitch sets. We should all have 2 stitches left, and now since we aren't doing any increases, we're just going to close off the row with 1 half double crochet. So yarn over, skip that next stitch, which should be the second to last, and then into that last, insert with 1 half double crochet, and now our row 2 is complete. Now our following row is going to be done exactly the same way. So since we're along the outer edge, chain 1 and flip our work. From here, we're going to do our suzette stitch sets again. So just into that first stitch with a single and a double crochet, and continue on doing our suzette stitch sets until we all have 2 stitches left. We are back and our row 3 is nearly finished. We should all have 2 stitches left. Now from here, we're going to just half double crochet into that last stitch just to close it off, and now we're going to connect it into the base together. So since we do want this to be a puff sleeve, what we're going to do is slip stitch it into the base, but we're going to start by slip stitching it into that same stitch into the base that our previous row is worked into. So as you guys can see, this is the last stitch into the base that my previous row is worked into. I'm going to slip stitch it into there to connect this row, and then to work our way up to the next row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and then do our following suzette stitch row. So we still aren't going to do any increases or decreases, so just find that first stitch from our previous row and do our first suzette stitch set, and continue doing our suzette stitch set till we reach the end of the row, making sure we close off the row with just 1 half double crochet. Now we are back. Our first 4 rows for our sleeve is completed. Now it's just going to be a repeat of these first 4 rows until we reach our stitch marker stitch. Now just as a really quick tip, it could get a little mushy once we have a few rows in. So just to make sure that we're keeping track of our increased rows, I just like to insert a stitch marker into the edge of the increased rows just so I can count. We should all have 1, 2, 3 rows in between our increased rows. So since my falling row is going to be an increased row, I'm just going to get that started off with you and let you do the rest on your own. So our increased rows are always going to start along the outer edge, just like how our first one did. So per usual, chain 1, flip our work, and into that first stitch, insert with a single and a double, and continue to do our suzette stitch sets until we all have 2 stitches left. We're nearly finished with our increased row. We all should have left 2 stitches, and just like our previous increased row, close off the row with 3 half double crochets. So skip that following stitch, which is our second to last, and into the last with 3 half double crochets. So there's 1 into that same last stitch with a second, and same last stitch with a third, and we're just going to connect it into the base together. Now it's going to be done exactly the same way as our previous row. So we're going to slip stitch into that same stitch that our previous row was worked out of. So into there, insert, pull through this slip stitch, that still doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and then we're going to be doing 3 non-increased rows, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, working our way all the way up and 2 are worked into our first stitch marker stitch. But once we're worked into that stitch marker stitch, I will meet you guys back along the outer edge, and then we can do our following decrease row together from there. So we are back. We've made our way up with the increased side of our sleeve. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side, but now instead of increases, we're going to be doing decreases. So what we're all going to do, since we all should be along the outer edge, we're all going to do our following suzette stitch row the same way that we've been doing it, making our way back down towards the base. Then I will meet you back when we have 4 stitches left, so we can close off the row with a decrease. So we are back with our first decrease row. We have made our way all the way down, and we should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left. Now all we're going to do is we're going to skip that 4th to last stitch, and then into the 3rd to last, 2nd, and last, we're going to be doing a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over into that 3rd to last stitch, pull through, 2nd to last, pull through, and last stitch, pull through to get a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 5 of those loops, and that is our decrease of 3. Now we're going to be slip stitching it into that next available stitch into the base, which is our stitch marker stitch. So this is the only row where we aren't going to be slip stitching into that last stitch from our previous row. So just into that next stitch marker stitch, insert with a slip stitch, and the rest of this portion is going to be a repeat. So since we just did our decrease row, our following 3 rows are going to be suzette stitch rows with no increases and no decreases. We're going to continue to repeat those 4 rows, making our way all the way down, and we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I will meet you guys back so we can seam everything together. We are back. I have just finished up the decrease half of our sleeve, and now we're going to seam it all together. Now this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as the side seam, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. We're all going to make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out, so all of our seams are along the outside. Then we're going to do our same single crochet seam. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up, a 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back so we can finish up with our band. So we are back. We have just finished up seaming our sleeve, and now we're going to work on the band or cuff, whatever you guys want to call it. So all we're going to do is start with a single crochet row. So first things first, let's make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the edge of our sleeve. Then we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every other side row. So let's get that started. We're all going to start by inserting our yarn onto our hook. We're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Let's all start by finding our first side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop, insert in through there with a single crochet. This is my following side row. We are going to skip that one and then into the next, insert into that top loop with a single crochet. Once more, skip the following side row, into the next side row, find that top loop and single crochet, and continue on with this, making our way all the way around. Now, as another really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So when the single crochet row is completed, try our piece on, making sure that it fits. Again, if it's too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. We've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. Now that we've slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff / band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I made a chain 6. Then from here, this is going to be the exact same as our bottom band, so just back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around. Now go ahead and get this portion completed, and I'll meet you back when we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so we can seam it all together. We are back. We have made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're just going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So this is going to be the same seam that we did for the bottom band. So just to talk you guys through it, all we're going to do is make sure that our work is still flipped right side up, right side out. Insert your hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then do our outside loop slip stitch seam so we don't have any more stitches left. Then do a chain up, a 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we did here on the other side. We are back. We have finished up both of our sleeves with the cuffs, and we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoy the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.